Caro, do you want to start off with an introduction to yourself and your books?
Yeah, I'm Caro Ramsay, and I write the Anderson and Costello series of novels. I think I'm at, I don't know what number I'm at, 12, 13, something like that. And I've written one standalone, which has been published as Mosaic and has now just been republished as The Cursed Girls with a lovely shiny cover.
Nice. When did The Cursed Girls come out? Was it just the other day?
Thursday, I think it was Thursday, yes. I've been doing a lot of interviews and TV and getting my photograph taken and all that kind of stuff. So I've got no real idea what day of the week it is, but yeah, I think it was Thursday.
When was it published as Mosaic? So how long has it been out in the name?
The first run sort of sold out very quickly. That was in 2018, I think it was, maybe earlier than that. I've really got no idea, but I know it sold out in hardback in America, which is why the new publishers have jumped on it and repackaged it and republished it. And there's also some exciting news about it that I'm not allowed to tell you, but it is one of those female drama, psychological, is she, isn't she, kind of things that they kind of like on certain aspect of television viewing at the moment. But I'm not allowed to say any more than that. And like most of these things, it'll probably get nowhere, but it's interesting and it's flattering that it's got this far. So yeah.
Amazing. So
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the girls in The Cursed Girls without giving too much away?
Yes, well, they're very different, and the peculiar thing was that they both sort of arrived in my head at the same time. You know, writers say sort of weird things like, you know, it just came to me in the middle of the night, but some books do that. And I just like to thought of Megan, who's, what does it say here? It says she's spent years avoiding her inheritance. And I think that's a lovely way of putting it. She's walked away from the big house where her family grew up, and she's got her own job, and she's in Glasgow, and she's very deaf, so she lives quite an isolated world, in an isolated world, all of her own sort of making. She's very much in control of things. And her mother just went away, walked out the house years ago and never came back. And with some aspects of her father, you can understand why her mother might have done that. But her elder sister is dying back at the family home, and she has to go home to say goodbye to her sister. And when she's there, she starts just remembering that the life that her and this other wee girl used to have, a girl who was born in Dunoon on the wrong side of the tracks and got up to all kinds of mischief. And they were both outsiders, because one of them was probably somebody who was expelled from school more often than not. And then Megan went to a very posh private school. And on her way home one day, she's very badly bullied by the local kids. And one of them, she's on the ground, and one of them kicks her, and Carla sees something roll up the street, and Carla goes to get it and realises it's her hearing aid. So Carla just goes and beats up the bad boys. And I think as a little lady, she'd quite be capable of that. So the two of them, even though they're incredibly different, they form a really strong bond. And I think the bonding is quite authentic. The sort of way Carla becomes Megan's ears, but Megan becomes Carla's social standing, if you like. So it was interesting, yeah, interesting book to read and write.
Why did you choose to make Megan deaf?
I treat quite a lot of deaf people, and I've trekked the high atlas of Morocco with a deaf person, and also given a deaf blind girl to take to the toilet in the middle of Gatwick Airport. So I learned the touch sign language very quickly. But the deaf guy was really interesting. You know, we were walking along a very high pass, and there was a 1,000-foot drop, and we were tied on to each other. And he said to me, "You walk in front of me." And I said, "No, you find a way easier. You walk in front of me." And he says, "No, if you're behind me and you fall, I won't hear you scream." And I thought, okay then, I'll walk in front of you. Interesting just how isolated. He said nobody ever tells a deaf person a joke because it's too much effort. And you miss those little
Oh dear. We lost Caro. I'm just going to try that.
It's always with fixed.
No, you're back
You
now.
lost me.
You just broke up.
Oh, I'm back now.
Got you back. We've got Patricia Forsyth watching. She said she's just finished Rat Run and she met you 2 years ago in Dundee. You were promoting the suffering of strangers.
Oh yes, that's right. I remember that event. Michael Malone was interviewing me, I think, at that event. And yes, and we had very nice Kit Kats before we went down into the library. I remember that.
Nice. Good way of remembering an event. Start Kit Kats for our authors, maybe. Andrew, one of our members who lives in Nottingham, says hello. And so does
hello,
Jason
Andrew.
Kelly. Well, he says he.
Oh yes. Yes, he posts a lot, doesn't he, Jason? He always asks what books everybody's reading at the weekend.
Yeah, he's one of our admins. Yeah,
right.
He's a good one. So where I got lost my train of thread then. Tell us a little bit more about your series that you've written. So I presume Rat Run's in that.
Rat Run was 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah, so Anderson and Costello. Anderson is a lovely, tall, blonde, really nice man. I'm not saying he's happily married, but he's married. He's got 2 kids. He's now got a wee Down syndrome grandchild, which he has adopted. And Costello is just a really ballsy, blonde female who's actually, I mean, she's nice, but she's very, very hard. She lived a very different life to he did, and they team up very well. The first in the series was shortlisted for a Dagger the year it came out, and the second in the series that was shortlisted for not for the Theakstons, for the other crime fest, the other crime book of the year. So yeah, they've done well, and the last 2 have been nominated for the McIlvanney, the Scottish crime novel of the year. So, but it is interesting when you write, because I know Bob McDevitt, one of the sort of chief judges, quite well. He said when you write a series, it's very difficult to win a prize like that with a serious novel, a serial novel, because it's the sort of same thing. You have to do something very different to actually win the prize. And then I wrote a standalone and they didn't even shortlist me. So
I only came across the McIlvanney Prize last year. And the strength of the shortlist was immense. I don't even know how they could have chosen a winner last year. Like, I read the whole shortlist and every book was amazing.
Yes, and how do you do it? Because they've all got such strengths in very different ways. I don't know how you can pick one over the other. You know, I have no idea. Not a job I could do, and not a job I've ever enjoyed doing when I've been asked to judge something. I was once asked to judge a dog competition. I managed that okay. Waggiest tail. That's what you get when you're a celebrity writer. You get to do Waggiest tail at the local dog show.
Oh, that's brilliant. I've judged book prizes before, but normally I like have a really clear sort of one that I think should win, even if it's not the one anybody else thinks. But when we looked at the McIlvanney one last year, we read the shortlist and we interviewed all the shortlisted authors in the group. And both me and Sam, who run the author chat, said that we just couldn't choose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had no idea. We were like, any one of them, you know, and you'd be happy if any one of them won as well, because they were all really good books. But
who did win it last year? I can't remember.
It was Pine.
Oh, that's right. Francis Took. Yeah. Was it her name? Something like that? Yeah. Yeah, because Norma, have you ever been to the presentation, you know, in the church? And we do the Tor Walk right up. So it's a very Viking kind of thing, and you're told not to wear too much hairspray because these torches are just being waved around at hair level. So you walk all the way up in Stirling, all the way up the ramparts to the castle from the, or actually this year they did it down the way down to the church, and then they had the presentation in the church. Craig Sisterton did it. It was really good. When I say this year, I mean the last time it was, what was that, 18 months ago or something now? Yeah, so we'll get back to it one day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's on my list of book festivals to go to. Andrew from Nottingham wants to know if your books are in libraries and on talking books.
You must come. They're on every platform. They're on. They're certainly libraries, because Seven House do a very nice hardback for Long Life Library, and they're also in talking books and audio and CD and large print and everything it can be. It's on. So just ask, and they'll dig them out for you. Yeah.
So back to the Cursed Girls, I felt like it had a real kind of Knives Out vibe, like that proper old school whodunit. Like there's even a really good kind of, is that the intention you went in with?
Yeah, I because when you write a series, I think somebody was talking about this on your Facebook page. When you write a series, your publisher, and it's a successful series, your publisher wants you to do the same thing again, but a wee bit different. And from watching TV programs, things like Morse and things like that, on a Christmas special, they'll take them to Australia or they put them up a mountain, and it's never the same, because the reader and the viewer want the familiarity of what you have. So I wanted to do a locked room mystery, and I managed that with the red. Bristol Crime Fest across from my editor, and I said, I've got this really good idea for a standalone, and I know now that her heart must have just sank, and she must have thought, please don't do that. But we talked about it. She said, yeah, go and write that. I'll be interested in seeing that. And I wrote it, had it. She says, this is wonderful, and I can say it sold incredibly well in America. But the Agatha Christie influence is very much there. And she said, I can't believe you even got all the suspects into the one room at the end. And the detective just went round and said, which one it was. So yeah, and I was quite proud of that. You're supposed to get to that bit and you think, yeah, I know exactly where this is going. Yeah.
I, gonna be honest, didn't know where it was going. But I could never work it out. It's not a thing about it.
I take that as a compliment. I take that as a compliment, because I think there's another story going on which quite absorbs you. The story of the two girls kind of absorbs you, and in some ways you almost forget that her mother went missing and nobody knows what happened to her. And it does obviously come up in the book and again, but right at the end, when they're all it's not in the library, I do it in the sitting room, don't they? They're all in the sitting room and they find out what happened to who and why and who did it.
I think the two trickiest things about that kind of book are one, sort of the characters, because you have to make it so character driven, isn't it? You have to make all of them really believable. How did you go about sort of getting in their heads?
To tell you the truth, they came to me. And again, that's a really strange thing that authors say, but they absolutely did. They came to me as just fully rounded human beings, all of them. The dad in particular, I knew exactly who he was even before I started writing him. And they were never rewritten, they never changed. And I can still hear the two girls sort of chatting in my head when on the summer's day when they're down at the Benbury, which is the big pond at the bottom of the garden, and they've got the boat and they're sitting down and they're just catching minnows and they're dipping their feet in. I still know that they would be having a laugh and a joke to this day, and that's probably 4 or 5 years since I wrote that, but I know what they're like. Yeah. And I think characters come across a lot better when the writer knows them as well as that. You know, a lot of writers use cards and they write down everything about the character on a card so that they know. But I know what they're like. It's like asking somebody about a member of their own family. Do they drink coffee? Yes, she does, but she would prefer an Earl Grey. You know, whereas Carla, she'd just be drinking Iron Brew straight out the can. She wouldn't care. You know, you just know them as if they're people.
So do you not keep details about your characters written down?
Does my editor wish I did? But no, I don't. But then again, yes, I do know them, so fair enough. I do keep track of ages because I write in real time. So children grow old, and how long is and Colin Anderson, how long has his daughter been at university now? Is she now doing her honours year, or what's she doing? And I think the boy, he's been in his room for about 3 years just playing computer games when he's supposed to be studying. So it's time he probably sat some exams and got out. So and then sad to talk about, but in the start of the next book, I looked at my the last book that was published, On an Outgoing Tide, and I looked at how old the dog was, and I thought, no, the dog was going to be about 18 and a half in this book. So yeah, so that was sad, and I got a lot of letters of complaint that I killed the dog off. Doesn't matter that you kill off children and put old ladies through mincers and things like that. That doesn't matter, but no, very upset that the dog had to go. But he got a new dog by the end of the book. He rescued another dog by the end of the book, so everything was fine.
That's good to hear. If they're written in real time, then are you gonna hit COVID and have to write about that?
The last book, what it does do COVID, In an Outgoing Tide. I was editing it just at the start of COVID, so. And it just fitted in beautifully because there's an elderly man lives in a house on the top of a hill down in the Clydeside, and someone from the local church is volunteering to do shopping, and they hand the shopping in every week, and they just get to know each other. And the other thing is that in times of COVID, it's quite natural for people to walk about wearing a face mask and gloves, and what a gift is that to a crime writer? He says, well, of course there's no fingerprints because everybody was wearing gloves when they were in here. There's no fingerprints in the car because they were wearing gloves when they were driving. So yeah, there was quite a nod to COVID, but just in the background. It's not a book about COVID.
Oh, you froze again a little bit. No, you're back again.
All right. My technical advisor came over to see what was happening there.
Yeah, you keep freezing a little bit. I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi. It's fine. You're with us mostly.
Right. No, we're right beside the Wi-Fi machine, and we've got a hard connection. So I don't. Yeah. Might just be a Sunday night thing. And I live in a small village, so maybe there's a lot of people on it at the same time. So.
Oh, maybe it's my internet. Who knows?
Oh,
could be me. The other thing I really liked about the Cursed Girls is the location, like where it's set. You feel really sort of involved in that like house and world of like the grounds and things that it's set in. Where in Scotland is that set, or is it a real place, or have you made it up?
So the top of the loch is real. The Holy Loch is real. It's one of the sea lochs near here. And if you're ever sailing out of Dunoon on the ferry and you look up, there is a house very high on the hill up there. And I just picked up that house and moved it down to the bottom near the water's edge and called it the Italian House. And I was on stage talking about that and saying, I wanted the house to be, you know, its days of grandeur are in the past. So I wanted it to have dry rot and wet rot and really smell quite a bit. And I was on stage with another author, and she said, I used to live in that house. And I went, you are joking. She said, no, I did. And she said, but you're perfectly right. It did smell of dry rot. She said, and they moved out of it many years ago, and I believe a business is now run from that house. So yes, but that was one of those moments where you think you should never write about anything real. You should never even indicate where it is, you know, because Sharon Bearden, a Scottish crime writer, said something about, you know, never you use any of Caro Ramsay's books to get a bus around Glasgow because the streets aren't right. And she's correct. Everything is slightly wrong so that you can't find anything that I've written about. You know, nobody can go to that place and say, that's the house the murder is in. And I think if you're published in America, that's a good wee tip, because you can get yourself into quite a bit of trouble doing that. As I nearly got into trouble on stage by slagging off this woman's wonderful house.
You see, you sort of think that it being in a real place and people going to look for where things happened would be something that people would like. Like, I know I've visited places that have read books in and gone and looked for those locations.
Yeah, so you can go up the Holy Loch and you can see something that looks like the Benbury, and there's something that resembles the bridge. So you see all that. But I wouldn't like someone writing about my house, putting a murder in my house, and then in 20 years' time a bus tour comes past and says, this is one of the locations for so-and-so was murdered. So you have to think about it, but it's just, yeah, but, I mean, it's whatever. But yes, I take your point. I mean, you can see the locations where it happened, but not precisely pin it down to anything. I think you've got to be a wee bit careful of people's privacy, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. There's a question on here. That's Jason. He says, when did you write Absolution?
When? 3 or 4 years before it was published, whenever that was. So I never wanted, this is quite a famous story, but I never wanted to be a writer. I like reading a lot of crime fiction, and I always say I've always had a bad back, and then I tripped up the stairs and fractured my back altogether. So I was in hospital for a very long time, and I was going to start murdering the people in the ward with me, especially the woman in the bed opposite. And while I was lying there, not able to move, someone brought me in a papermate pen, because you can write with them upside down, and a clipboard, and I wrote 250,000 words. Because I wasn't ill, it was just the fact that I couldn't move. And those 250,000 words became Absolution and Singing to the Dead. So that must have been 2006, maybe, something like that. And then I came out of hospital, hobbled along to my local writers group. AJ Close said, that sounds really good. Can I read some more of that? And she said, send that off to Jane Gregory, because she likes the people who write the way you do. And Jane looks after Val McDermott and Anne Cleve and all those people. So I wrote off, and Jane accepted me like that, and that was it. And so I'm in a very strange position, touch wood, that everything I've ever written has been published, but that's because that's kind of all I write. So I've been asked to write 3, because I don't write short stories. I've been asked to write 3 short stories in my career. I've written 3 and they've all been published. But unless somebody asks me, I don't do it, because I don't really know how to do it, to tell you the truth. So yeah, I don't have any books under the bed. You know, if I ever deliver something and they say, we hate this, have you got something else? My answer will be no.
Oh no. But you've been lucky in that you've never delivered something that they haven't liked.
Oh, absolutely. But then I write very much in the groove that I write in. You know, I don't do anything mad, and I know now what a punt they took on letting me do the standalone. I mean, Anderson and Costello have got a huge following, but they were very gracious in letting me do that. They could have said, absolutely not, get back and do what we tell you to do, what we pay you to do, which is that, not this. But yeah, they've been very good. I got on very well with my editor, so yeah, she's good. She's great.
So when you started writing like that, how was that different to how you write now? Did you just start with how, like you said, like the characters appear in your head and you just had the idea and you wrote it as you went? Or do you have to think it?
So that the first book starts off with a girl lying in hospital having to have everything done for her. And of course that was so autobiographical to my position at that, as I was at that moment, but it didn't dawn on me till someone else pointed that out. And I just had this idea of just finding out who somebody was when they are incapacitated and they can't tell you. I mean, if somebody was in a coma, how would you find out who they were? And if you didn't want anybody to find out who they were, how would you stop them finding out who they were? So that's kind of how it started off. But that book went through 10 massive rewrites because I had no idea what I was doing. And I don't know what Jane saw in that book. She obviously saw some sort of talent for writing and maybe a talent for telling a story, but no idea how to write a book. So it was ripped apart and put together and ripped apart and put together until I learned my trade. And now what I send in is almost exactly what gets printed. You know, it's very little sort of structural editing needed. So, yeah.
So what inspires the stories in your head then? Do you start with like a scene, or do you get like an idea for like a crime? What sort of sets you off on the next book?
So first of all, you press send on the edits, the proof edit of the last one, and you say, that was so awful, I'll never ever ever write another book again, I'm not putting myself through this. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning you wake up and you go, wouldn't it be funny if, and then something sparks off. So I don't know where I got the idea of killing 5 members of the same house and lying them all down on the living room floor and covering them with a duvet. And then everybody sort of knows that the people have gone on holiday, so 2 burglars break into the house and they find they trip over these dead bodies lying on the floor. I don't know where that came from, but that's obviously going somewhere. And before we went sort of on air, we were chatting about my day job and how people just tell me things, and that patient in today telling me about urban orienteering, where you can get people running about on their own through Glasgow at 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody knows where they are. I'm thinking, oh, that's going in a book at some point. So all these wee facts just go into this big creative bit in the back of your brain and it tumbles round and then it sort of spurts out with a story. So, yeah. And I do like killing people. You know, like people who don't thank you when you've let them in a traffic jam and things like that. Yeah, just, you know, people who fling cigarettes out of a window. Big list of people that I just don't going in a book.
So if I mess up this interview, will I find myself as a body in a book?
Some people like to go. I mean, people pay a lot of money for charity to be killed in a novel, and if you like someone, you tend not to kill them. If you don't like them, you'll write them in the book and you'll make them do something awful. I was interviewed by the Daily Record last week, and he says, "Well, what do you mean by awful?" And I said, "Well, you could force them to be the British entrant in the Eurovision Song Competition." And he said, "You're just cruel beyond belief." I said, "But you know, you're a writer. You can do anything with people. You know, you could force them to resit their Latin O level. You know, really cruel."
So you whenever I see you sort of interacting online, you're often talking to other authors. So you're like quite good friends with the 4 blokes, I think.
I deny that I know them.
Do you?
I deny everything, and I will stand by no comment and stand by the yes. So there's the 4 of us who live very closely together. There's me, Alex Gray, Douglas Skelton, and Michael Malone. So that's how that, and Teresa Talbot and Pat before she moved to France. So we're all sort of quite close together. So yeah, that is probably true. But I got on, I'm not saying I got on, Douglas and Michael and I have got exactly the same sense of humour. So we just fall about laughing all the time and nothing ever gets done. And then Alex Gray sort of says, will you three behave? And we go, no. So that's sort of our relationship.
Excellent. I love Alex Gray's book. It's brilliant. In fact, they're all great. So
this might not happen, but it's a independent bookshop week, and we did 2 years ago. We did a thing right across Scotland. We did all the independent bookshops in the Central Belt in one day. We started off paddling in Ettrick Bay and Rossi, and we ended up in the sea at St Andrews. So this year we're hoping to go to St Andrews and take Trump, the pantomime horse, and Alex Gray is going to interview us, Douglas, myself, and Michael, in our characters for the Carry On Sleuthing plays that we do. So it's going to be very embarrassing doing that live on a beach where real people are going to say, why is that woman standing in wellies talking to a pantomime horse? But independent bookshops, they need all the help they can get. So it's a good way to sort of raise their profile a wee bit.
That sounds amazing. You have to share that when you do it.
When we do it,
you have automatic admin approval just to share it.
Yeah. Last time driving, we got a brilliant day for it last year, and we're driving along the motorway and we were singing the hits of the Bay City Rollers, and it became a sponsored charity thing to get us to shut up. People were actually donating money to get us to be quiet. And I have a pantomime horse on long-term loan, but I'm having to contact his owner to see if he can actually go in the water, or does the pantomime horse have to wear wellies? He will be masked, obviously, with COVID regulations, but we're just seeing what we can do with him as immersion in water.
Nice. How do you find wellies for a pantomime horse? This is not a question I ever thought I'd ask in an interview.
This is an issue I am exploring at the moment, because I know pantomime horses can't be washed. They have to be dried by cleaned by dry cleaning by ozone or boron or something like that. So yeah, it's a complicated issue because we like to keep him healthy, and he has been stabled now for over a year. So yeah, but everybody loves Trump. If you ever come to bloody Scotland, we sometimes do a Carry On Sleuthing play. And Trump once fell up the stairs at bloody Scotland trying to get on the stage because nobody realised that pantomime horses can't go up steps. And he just and of course the whole audience just started laughing, and they came out and tried to help him up and all sorts of, just madness. That was the year they stole the corpse off the stage, and they were crowd surfing with the corpse, and we're on stage trying to do a play, a very bad play, and they have to guess who the murderer is, and they're just about.
Yeah, I am. I really need to come to bloody Scotland. You're just selling it so much.
Yeah. You absolutely do. Let me know when you're coming up, and we'll meet up and we'll swap drinks.
Yeah. Pat said she was born in St Andrews. She needs a date for your independent bookshop touring.
We're not doing the tour this year because we can't travel through that many zones up in Scotland yet, and we've got to plan it. So this year we're just going to Rossi. That was something like the 23rd of June 2019, that would have been, and we ended up in, she'll know it, the bookshop in St Andrews. It begins with a T, and the name's gone right out of my head, and they made us a lovely cup of coffee, and we had scones in there. So that's what I remember about that place. Yes, and that was about 5:30, 6 o'clock when we got there. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, so nice. no across country this year.
Can you? So yeah, because I forget that the Scottish restrictions are still a lot more than we have. Mm-hmm. Toppings apparently is a bookstore.
Toppings. See, she knew exactly where I was talking about. It's a fabulous bookshop. It's a really old kind of wooden bookshop, and it smells of wood and dust and books, and it's one of those places you can just go in and, you know, it doesn't, they do nice coffee, but it doesn't smell of coffee. Fantastic place.
Can you travel sort of down to us? Would you come down to something like Harrogate?
Can you travel down to I normally go to Harrogate. I don't think I'll go this year because I don't. I'm just not that sort of COVID. I've just got to be really sort of a wee bit more careful with my job because we treat a lot of sort of vulnerable people. So I personally wouldn't be going. I was there the last Harrogate there was. I had to do a forensic workshop on how to kill people and get away with it. And ended up hitting the wonderful author Simon Brett over the head with a cricket bat. So that was worth it. Yes. I think they said there would be about 40 people turned up, and I think there was about 105 queued up outside. So if anybody was in that queue, I do apologise. But yeah, we'll redo that workshop one day. That's one of the workshops I do because I've got a diploma in forensic medical science as well. And obviously with my job and knowing a lot about anatomy and cutting up dead bodies and things like that, yeah, I'm pretty good at killing people and getting away with it.
Excellent. I was at the last Harrogate. I didn't even know that was a panel that was on.
It was in the room. We had a room of our own. It was sold out very early on, and it was Blackthorn that ran it. It wasn't in the upstairs. It was in the room near the ladies' toilets. It was in that sort of side room. So yeah, it was a good event. It was very good. They just kept letting more people in, so they're all sort of standing at the back, and there was quite a lot of audience participation in how to kill people. I can tell you that. And I also and it's supposed to be for crime authors. And I redid it in Aberdeen. They asked me to redo it for members of the public, and it was sold out really, really quickly. And I'm thinking, see, if the murder rate in Aberdeen just rockets after I've done this presentation, I could be in very, very serious trouble. But seemingly nobody did, and it was absolutely fine.
See, it's the kind of thing I would go to because I just periodically, like, I've got a zombie head, and I periodically murder it at my school so that the kids can solve the crime.
Yes, and now that you're saying that, I did there's a school near here that has a lot of children who are either in quite a lot of medical trouble, or they've been expelled, or they've got a really difficult home life. And the one thing that unites them is I get them to write a murder story, and the teachers say it really captures their imagination about how to kill somebody and get away with it. And we were chatting away, and this guy said, "Oh, I would be driving along, and I would just chuck him out the car, and he'd be on the motorway." And I said, "But that body would be fine very quickly. You wouldn't get away with it." He says, "No, you're right. My dad didn't." I thought, yes, well, moving swiftly on. Yeah, so he wanted to bring a helicopter in. He says, "Can I do that?" I said, "If you want a helicopter, you do a helicopter." And then this right too far, and what she meant was she was copying out the letters, and she was like, she would be like 14 or 15, but the size of her, she could have been 8 or 9, and she just had that sort of fetal alcohol sort of features about her. And I thought, just there, but for the grace of God. And yeah, she was so chuffed to get her photograph taken and put in the local paper, and holding the book up, and it was great. And it's nice when you can do things like that. Yeah. I'm using entire school bag. We were actually planning to kill the maths teacher, but he took it in very good faith.
They're the best kind of teachers.
But do you do yours for a zombie head then?
Yeah, I've got we've used other things, but the zombie head, she's affectionately called Margaret. Me and
Margaret the
yeah,
zombie.
she looks like someone.
She's good.
Well, she looked like someone that me and the old teacher who made it together used to work with.
All right. So she's based on a real person.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a story around that you and I will have to talk about one year at Bloody Scotland. Absolutely.
Potentially. But yeah, she makes a good fiction.
Yeah, yeah. Or if she's the murderer and nobody recognises her because she's got a zombie head on.
So we've talked about your series and things. How do you come up with the titles for your books, or is that publishers?
Yes. Yes, but that's something you learn over time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5 was the one. I haven't had a title change since book 5. Book 1, that was one of the. I mean, I got a 6-figure sum for writing those first 2 books, and that was the 2 sticking points the publisher had. So my agent says now they're offering you all this money, and there's 2 things they want to do different, and you will agree to this. And I'm like, of course I'll agree to it. One is that the main character was called Cahoon, and you can't have that because nobody can pronounce it. And I thought, seriously, in this world, nobody can pronounce Cahoon. I said, the English person actually says, how do you pronounce that? So you learn on page 10 how to pronounce it. She just went, no, make it something that everybody can pronounce. What about Anderson? And we said, yes, okay, we'll go with that. And the title and it's still in my head, it's still called Ampersand, that wee sign, because I just like that wee sign. And, and one thing, and it leads to another, and it leads to another, and it leads to another. But they said, no, that's rubbish. You've got to have a very crime title, which is why it then went off to Absolution. And I came up with the title Mosaic, and I liked that, and they liked it, but they felt it wasn't crime enough for the paperback, which is why they changed it to The Cursed Girls. And they said, what do you think about calling that? And I went, yes, that's fine. That's fine. So that's how that came about. So I didn't actually name this one. And that came about the day after I'd written a blog about the amount of book titles with the word girl in the title. There was the girl in the window, and the girl in the train, and the girl up the tree, and the girl with the earring, and I said, I've just written a blog about that. So yes, if that's what sells, that's what there's a whole publicity department are there to help you. So if they suggest something, they know the market much more than I do. So I just go along with it. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of studies, isn't there, about sort of book covers and titles, and that's the reason you get so many girls and then people in a coat walking away and stuff, because people apparently make really split-second decisions about what to buy.
Yes, and there's also fashions in the way the book looked. When Singing to the Dead came out, it was fashionable to have the title in sort of as if a kidnapper had done it, and cut it out of bits of newspaper. That was a sort of trend then. And then there was a trend for just very dark plain covers with just words on. And but I quite like the cover of this. I think that's a very sort of emotive, with this the wee girls in their wee legs. They look like very innocent wee girls in that picture. So, but I've never kicked hard back about the covers, and being printed all over the world. It's amazing how different countries interpret the book and give you 2 totally different covers. It's amazing, yeah. But interesting, because as you say, as it's put to me, if you're late for a plane and you're running and you're in the airport, you want to be able to put your hand out and you'll know by looking at it what you're buying. And it's that coded, that's what you're talking about, is that code of what's on the front. It's very recognizable that you know what it is. Yeah.
Do you have a favourite sort of international cover?
The American of is very weird, but it's very nice. It looks like a 1920s house, and it's all in sepia. And there's a girl lying on an old-fashioned settee, and she's got either angel wings or the wings of a swan attached to her back. I'll just leave that with you. Very beautiful, but did it have anything to do with the book? I'm not quite sure, but it's the American market, so they'll do it as they wish.
Do you ever have you had any interest in adapting the series into a TV show?
I can't answer the series. I can answer that. There's been lots of sniffing around, but nothing exactly. Yeah, so I mean, it's a difficult one because you don't get that much money for it, and they can absolutely ruin you if it's badly done. The very first day Ellen Pascoe was done by Hale and Pace, the two comedians. And if you think, I think ITV had the rights for Rebus for a long time to stop someone else making it while they were making Taggart. And then, of course, the first Rebus was done by John Hannah, which was good, but it didn't. Did it get Rebus quite as, as the way people had Rebus in their minds? And then Ken Stott did it. So if it's done well, it'll do your sales well. If it's done badly, it can kill you. So if you're not getting that much money for it, you're just better. You've got to wait to see what money they're putting up behind it. So ITV just keep producing things, redoing, the Poirots and the Marples and things like that, and Foyle's War, and there just isn't the money in television to do things of that standard now. So I think that's why people just love watching those rewrites. So not rewrites, but reviewings.
Yeah, there's more streaming services and things looking at stuff as well, though, isn't there?
Yes, but I do watch ITV3 a lot, so that's probably why I'm sort of hooked up on that, and also because it's so far distant. There was something on recently, and I just threw something at the telly because at the end they pulled out their mobile phone and just phoned for help. Says, why didn't you do that in the first episode? And we wouldn't have to have sat through all this. So it's just like, you think, well, that wouldn't be allowed, and I'm just doing that. So I get quite ratty watching things on the telly, and I think, well, that's nonsense.
Because I feel like The Cursed Girls is, and I apologise for this, it was my introduction to you as an author.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel
there's nothing wrong with that. That's good.
I feel like you write very visually, so it would, they would adapt very well to be watched.
Yes, but what if the person reading it and adapted it didn't see what I saw? And then would I be able to watch it? I find it difficult enough to listen to the audiobooks because when I'm going to call him James Patterson, that's James McPherson, he always makes the female detective far too polite for my liking, because he's a really nice guy and he just makes her really polite. So there's a bit where he has her saying, "Oh, you think so?" like that, whereas what she's saying is, "Oh, you think so?" So it's just a wee stress, but he just always just makes her personality not quite as nasty as it actually is. So, but that's their job, to interpret the part as to what's written in the page in front of them. But the Cursed Girls was done by a female actor, and she and I spent a long time on the phone because she wanted to stress the voices of how Megan would sound, because she is quite posh Glaswegian, and whereas Carla would kind of just talk like that, she'd be kind of Glasgow, kind of, so she just wanted to get that voice, those voices right. And I thought that was very good of her. They don't get paid to talk to the author on the phone, but she did go out of her way. So she's made a very, very good book.
I don't think I'd even
Is that someone?
know. I don't think I'd know what the difference is between a posh Glaswegian accent and just a normal one.
I think you would if you heard it. Yes, you would. So yes, there's a sort of twang. The more posh you get in Glasgow, the more you tend to sound like Edinburgh. You get a wee bit of that sort of thing going on. you know, and the sort of people who appear on location, buying houses in Glasgow for 1.5 million will tend to talk like that. Whereas Carla would talk more like Billy Connolly. You would get that sort of just that rift in her voice, a much more lyrical kind of way of talking. Yeah.
Nice. So Andrew's got a question. I'm going to stop monopolising you with mine. He says, how long does it take to get your book on display? That is after drafts, editor checks, and cover design.
No idea. No idea at all. So because I know nothing about publishing, I'll leave that up to these people. But so I handed in the next book, which is called The Silent Conversation, and I've not had the proof edit back where you put words the right way around and that's not spelt right. I've not had that back yet, but it's been published in September. So I got to choose. They did 2 covers for it. It's a bit like it's my version of Rear Window, and I'm glad that I wrote it before I saw the film The Girl in the Window. I've not read the book The Girl in the Window, but it's another take on that same thing. And I handed in, and I got 2 weeks later, I got the covers to choose, this one or this one, because they weren't quite sure which one to go with, and we all decided on the same one in the end. And it's coming out in September. So what are we now, June? So that's how a quick turnaround it can be. And I handed it in on the last day in February. So that will be proofed just now. And then I'll get it back and I'll turn that proof round in 3 or 4 days and send it off. And then we get a copy back to read and just make sure we're happy with it. We sign it off and then it goes for printing. So the publishing houses work on a cycle, and you've got to fit in with the cycle. It's what they're doing. It's not what I'm doing. It's what they're doing. So they'll have a book in front of me and a book behind me, and they all just go through as if you're going down a sort of canal, you know. That's how it tends to work.
How many things do you work on at one time?
One. Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. So I'll be writing one, and I can be proofing another one. But when I'm doing that, I'll stop writing this and get that project out of the way. And then if like an idea has come to me and I'm sitting doing absolutely nothing, I might think of a few or and I know people like James Patterson, they have 12 projects on the go at the same time, but that would just make my head explode. So no, I'm not doing that. No, just one's enough. One's enough when you've also got a job, so it's fine.
Were you always going to write crime? You said you read a lot. Did you choose to write crime because that's what you read?
I think so, but I never intended on becoming a writer. I was quite happy doing what I was doing. And then I hurt my back, and it was like, you know, one door closes and another one opens, and I just slipped very easily into doing it, you know. And yeah, so I think I'm just a very good liar, you know. I can just lie very easily on paper, and people like reading it, so that's fine. You know? And I never have to stress about, I have to wait until I feel, you know, some crime writers tend not to. But some writers say, I have to wait until I get the idea. I'll wait until the muse hits me, and when the moon's at a certain angle and you've done this and you've done that, and you just write it. Someone's paying you quite a lot of money to write it. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to do. Just put words on paper and join them up. You know, it's not mystical.
I love how you talk about writing. It's brilliant. So
I do honestly think that some writers like to make it into something a way up here that you have to aspire to, and that you have to be a certain sort of person to do it. You don't. You just have to put pen to paper, sit down, fingers on the keyboard, and just go. Just don't think about it, just go, and you'll be amazed what comes out. And wait till you get somewhere before you go back and edit it. So many people, you know, you can edit rubbish, but you can't edit nothing. So get writing, you know.
Good advice. So what kind of things do you like to read?
At the moment, it's one of the kind of downsides of writing successfully is that you get a lot of things to read, to comment on, which means that you can't really read stuff you want to read. I do get to do that on holiday, but most of the holidays I've been on, probably in the last 5 years, I've been writing while I've been there. And that's not because I have to, it's because you can't stop. You know, you've got to put a sin in a day. So I read a lot of Scottish crime writers, obviously. There's something very nice that a publisher sent me Friday morning, but I don't think I can talk about that, but that's going to be very exciting when that gets published. So I'm reading a proof of Douglas Skelton's at the moment. I've got a proof of Denzel Merrick's to read at the moment, and I've got that new thing to read. And someone just sent me a book because he's made his character Glaswegian. And he says, I don't know how Glaswegian people speak. He said, could you go through it and just pick out every time he talks Glaswegian and see if you would say that? I mean, I no bother. And the phrase I no bother will probably be in it. So yeah. I picked up a few Billy Connolly-isms already, but yeah, it's a good book. So things like that are good to do, but there are times when someone brings out a book and you just think, oh, I wish I could just read that, but I don't have time. So you have to save it for a special day.
I feel your pain. We read something for every author that we interview, and that kind of fills your reading list sometimes.
Yeah, it eats into your time when you would just might want to just cite, and no disrespect to any of that, and I'm sure you find lots of great writers you might never have read anyway, and maybe a different kind of book that you might not have read, but sometimes you just have your own groove and you'd like to be over there and reading that, and you're not allowed because you've got this to do. Yeah, so I totally respect you people who do this kind of thing. I can never do that. No, I would be, yeah, I couldn't do it.
That's quite nice, actually. I mean, like you said, you can find things. It's frustrating because sometimes you don't get to read like the thing that you really want to read. I've cheekily got around it by booking in the author of like a book that I really wanted to read for an author chat, so that I have to read a book.
I see. Oh, that's quite a clever way of doing it, isn't it?
I know, yeah. I thought it was quite smart.
Yeah. And does the other girl who does she do the same thing?
A little bit,
or does she now worked out that you've done it because you've just told her?
If she's watching, she's worked it out, hasn't she?
Get that to yourself.
Should have done. Can't, let away all my secrets. We've got 3 minutes left.
All right, I'm just going to say that, now everybody's sitting wondering on what authors do you not have in an author chat because you don't like reading their books. That's what everybody's wondering now.
So when I set out doing the author chats with this group, because I founded the group with my dad, and I've always run the author chats. And my rules for the author chats are that you have to be a member of the group, which we can be fairly flexible about, and have a book published.
All right.
And that's it.
And that.
Yeah. I'd never turn anyone down, even if it wasn't a book I would normally read. I've lost Caro again, I think. Well, hopefully she's back.
Just Kelvin side versus the Gorbals. That's the answer to the accent question you were asking.
Yeah. Is it?
Absolutely. Two very different parts of Glasgow, let's put it that way.
Okay. I've only ever been to Glasgow once, and that was to go to the airport. So.
Right, well, you're going to have to improve your performance on that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Get you up there more often.
Well, I love Scotland. Would happily come up there more often. Yeah. We just need to be able to travel again. So we've got
yes, absolutely.
We've got 2 minutes left. Do you want to finish us off with a reminder about your books? Show us off the covers and things again.
Yes, I think I've only got this one with me. This is The Cursed Girls, and it's selling very well. And it's Some Secrets Can Never Stay Buried. That's that one. On an Outgoing Tide was published in hardback earlier in the year, and it should be coming out in paperback quite soon. And then there'll be the silent conversation, which is my take on the Rear Window situation. That will be out in September, hardback, and then probably paperback sometime next spring. But so one thing I would want to say is that my publishers are asking me to do a newsletter because everybody's getting very confused about what book is coming out where, when, and why, because there's so much of my backlist being published. So I'm on Facebook. If you want to come on the newsletter, first one will be going out end of June. Just drop me a DM and we'll do all the GDPR and get back to you. So that's just the same sort of ramblings as I do when I'm on these interviews. You know, I just kind of talk nonsense and a wee bit of murder flung in every now and again. And there will be a picture of Trump with the pantomime horse. I will do that. I will make sure that we get him on the newsletter.
Yeah, we need a picture of the pantomime horse. I would agree. The fact that you own a pantomime horse is just my favourite thing from this interview.
It's a pantomime horse in wellies with a COVID mask on, and we're hopefully doing to do this because we're always trying to raise a wee bit of money for, you know, whatever, and maybe one of the charities on the island, and we're going to have, hopefully, guess what crime writer this is with a COVID mask and a funny hat, and that's all you'll see, and there'll be lots of us, and you just got to guess who we all are. So we're just thinking how to sort of pull all that together. So, but basically, you know, you've interviewed Craig Robertson. Obviously, if you just offer these people beer, they'll just do whatever you tell them. So it'll be fine.
Fair enough. We'll get it. Ask Mike Craven. He's got a good silly hat.
Has he? Oh, right. Yes, he'd be up for that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, give him, definitely.
I'm making a note of that, and I'll tell them that you volunteered them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So all that's left to say then is thanks for joining us. It's been brilliant.
It's been very nice just sitting here on a sunny. It's a nice sunny evening here in Glasgow. So yeah, lovely to talk to you all, and lovely to meet some of the people who have been commenting down the side. I'd have to put my glasses on to read it properly, but yes, it's been very good. Thank you very much.